Hi, everybody, and welcome to Drop Shot, where the love for tennis meets the thrill of competition. My name is Michele Dinella, and I will be your host and fellow tennis enthusiast. Join me on my personal tennis journey from the clay courts of southern Italy to the bustling streets of Washington, D.C. In each episode, my guests and I will share personal experiences, we'll comment on Grand Slams, analyze players and stats, and even offer tips on gear and apparel. Whether you are a seasoned pro or maybe just picking up a racket, sit back and get ready to serve, volley, and ace your way through the fascinating world of tennis. All right, listeners, welcome back to a brand new episode of Drop Shot. We received so much love in the first two episodes, and I want to thank you all for the support and the feedback that you have given us. So, kudos to that. And if you would like to support this format, make sure to spend 30 seconds of your life by liking, by following, and leaving a review with 5 stars if you are on Spotify, or if you're listening through an iPhone, go to your Apple Podcast app and make sure to write a review because that helps us immensely with the algorithm. But I want to delve right away into the theme of this episode. You've read the title, so you know what's up. We have another big tournament to talk about. We have the Rome Open, and I have here with me again my guest, Stefano Tognazzi, to speak about it.
Hi, Michele. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for having me back, and thanks for all the nice feedback we got from the first two episodes.
Stefano, they loved our accents, so we are on the right track. Let's keep being Italian. Let's keep talking and speaking broken English. I think that's the right way to the heart of our listeners. And I wanted to start. Actually, we were talking about this off mic, asking ourselves where do we want to start this episode from, and Stefano had a great idea, which is to start from the predictions that we made in the last episode about Madrid. So I'll leave it to you, Stefano. Were our predictions accurate or not?
Well, let's start with the men, and I would say we were slightly above 50-50. We said we kind of expected bounce backs from Tsitsipas and Zverev, and they did bounce back with Tsitsipas reaching the quarterfinals before losing one of the most surprising games against Jarry, who made it to the final, but we're going to talk about it later. But it was definitely better than getting eliminated in the first round, and definitely Zverev bounced back by bringing the trophy home. And we also picked Rude. I would say disappointing performance from him on clay. We also said about Nadal and his run. You had a great episode about Nadal's career, and we're going to touch upon it later. And unfortunately, we said Djokovic would be the favorite, and I explicitly added unless he gets injured, and
Mhm.
then we can start talking about that. So I have an anecdote about this. So I was on a flight. I was about to take off, and the last thing I saw before going into airplane mode was a notification from a news website, and it said Djokovic hit in the head by a water bottle, and I couldn't open it, and I was like gone. And I spent the whole flight thinking like somebody from the stands threw a water bottle, and then I got off the
Must
plane.
be a must be a lot of water. You thought.
Yeah. No, no, like a proper bottle. And I was like, I spent the whole flight thinking like, well, some idiot from the stands, and this is gonna be like bad for like the whole Rome tournament, you know. And then I saw it right away was kind of an accident, but the way
Uh-huh.
he reacted was like soccer players when they get touched and they fall to the ground. But
Hmm.
he had stitches on, so probably it was not 100%. But yeah, I was surprised. He usually never loses these type of games, and he has already lost two this year against very lesser opponent compared to him.
Yeah, I was playing tennis when I heard the news from a friend, and when he told me a water bottle, I thought immediately of a plastic bottle. So I was very confused, just like you. And then I went home and I saw, okay, I get it now. It was just very unfortunate how the fan bent over and it looked like a big water bottle, one of those metal ones, and it hit just like bonk in the middle of Djokovic's head, and you can see him fall down right away. I mean, you can see the pain. So yeah, I don't want to minimize that. Um, I think it did have an influence on the rest of his game. Against, was it Tabilo that he was playing? Am I correct?
Yes, he lost against Tabilo.
Yes, and I wanted to touch upon that to say that Tabilo or Tabilo, I never know how to pronounce him, um, actually played a very good tournament. So yes, it had probably an influence, but Tabilo was on fire in Rome, and we have to recognize that. So yeah, a little bit of a disappointment from Djokovic, just like Rafa Nadal. I was commenting in the previous episode about Nadal's career with my friend Misha that there was a point in the early stages of Rome where Nadal fell down on the ground and then got back up right away and won the actual point. And I was like, that's crazy. I was sharing that on YouTube with my friends, and probably sent it to you as well, Stefano. I don't remember, but I was feeling like Nadal could make his way through at least the semifinals or something, and I was very disappointed when I see him get knocked out. So these are my biggest disappointments, and I agree with your analysis. But let's go also to the ladies. I think we were pretty accurate saying that Świątek would keep dominating. I remember saying that. I don't. I'm not sure what you said about it.
Well, so the men's prediction were kind of a mixed bag, but the women's one we kind of got them all right. We predicted a deeper run by Coco Gauff, which she did, reaching the semifinal and then getting blasted by Iga Swiatek, as everybody else is. And we both picked the kind of quote correct final of a rematch between Iga and Sabalenka, although you picked Iga to win it all, and I originally picked maybe a revenge game from Sabalenka, but she got hurt a bit throughout the tournament, so that's gonna be we gonna touch about it as well later in the episode. So yeah, pretty much spot on the ladies, and it was kind of very similar to the Madrid tournament, whilst the men was a little bit more unpredictable.
Yeah, I was actually rooting for Sabalenka, so I hoped to see that kind of revenge final. Well, we got the final, which is already a lot. We got another win from Swiatek, which, in my opinion, has dominated Rome in every possible way. But let's get into it. I wanted to start from Coco Gauff, because she had an interesting game in the round of 16, I believe, against Paula Badosa. And that was a harder game than it looked because it lasted for 3 sets and the last set was very, very close. And in the end, Goff made it between the two. But I saw Badosa in pretty good shape. We were hoping to see Goff advance a little more in this tournament, and we got it. And then the next round, the quarterfinals was Goff against Zheng, the Chinese champion, and it was, in my opinion, a very good game, just like the one with Badosa. It was very muscular because Zhang was trying to put that on that kind of level, but you could see how, well, if you want to do that with Coco Gauff, she's gonna retaliate on you. Like, you can't put it on a muscular level with her, because she's athletic, she's fast, she's strong, and she just dominated that quarterfinal. So I have to say I was satisfied with Goff's path in this tournament. Yes, as you said, Stefano, the semifinals against Swiatek were just disappointing. I believe that Swiatek is just on a different level right now. She's just unplayable, and the only one that could get to her level was Sabalenka. But we will see that there were some obstacles that stopped her in the final. But I wanted to know your thoughts about Goff in particular.
Yes. So you will hear me stress this in this episode, and I stressed this already a bit in the first episode, but court time is ever so important. And when you have to spend energies throughout a tournament that is long as 10 days or 2 weeks, as like Grand Slams are, it really takes a toll on you. And whilst Swiatek, as we're going to see later, spends very little time on court and she wins all the points, and she's relatively fresh every time she steps on the court. That was not the case for Coco Gauff, where she might or should have won matches a bit easier and without dropping sets, and that forces you to stay more time on court, spend more energy, be for more time under the sun, and you have less time to recover. And then when you face in form, fresh, quotes obviously, because in a semifinal you cannot be fully fresh and rested, but when you face such a player on that level of fitness as Viontek is as well at the moment, then you're gonna struggle, and you really want to be at the top for these type of matches. Just to give you some numbers, Swiatek has not dropped a single set, and she lost only one set by conceding 5 games. So it was one set that went 7-5 against Angelique Kerber, and that was it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting statistic. I really like that, and I think, yeah, Goff didn't have the eye of the tiger. She hasn't had it for a few months now, and that's really a pity. But also, I'm confident that she's young enough that she still has a lot to learn, and so that will just come naturally as time passes by. On the other side, let's talk about Swiatek's path. Yeah, she had a relatively easy round of 16, at least on paper, versus Kerber, which is number 238 in WTA. But she still managed to give Swiatek a hard time, even if in the end the final result was 2 sets. 0 for Swiatek. And then there was this quarterfinal with Keys. Oh man, I feel bad for Keys again. I said it in the last episode in Madrid, but she always finds the wrong opponents. I think that if Keys was paired with someone, for example, like Goff or Danielle Collins, that made it to the quarterfinals, she would have had a chance. But as I said, Swiatek was just unplayable. There was no match against keys, just like there was no match in the semifinal between Świątek and Coco Gauff. And I agree with you. The impression that Iga Swiatek gives me is that she never sweats for some reason. The only time that I saw her sweat lately was in that final in Madrid against Sabalenka. It was very, very close. But this tournament, she didn't drop a single a single molecule of sweat, in my opinion. She was doing everything like it was effortless. And that's probably one of their best qualities as a tennis player. So yeah, this is this side of the table. But I wanted to go on the other side because I think there's also interesting stuff there. Starting from my pet peeve, Maria Sakkari, that lost again, unfortunately, to Sabalenka, to Azarenka. Pardon me. And Azarenka, despite being kind of an older player, she still has some good shots, even though in the next round in the quarterfinals she got annihilated by Daniel Collins. And I want to spend a moment to talk about her because she played this tournament with such a spirit. She was such a warrior. And I really love to see her play until the end against Sabalenka in the semifinals. She's really doing well lately. She knows that she only has maybe a few years of good tennis in her, and she's giving her best right now. I don't know if what you think, Stefano.
Well, actually, and I'm not the only one thinking about this, and a lot of people say that basically since she retired, since she announced that her retirement, she's been playing the tennis of her life, winning Miami, I believe, and now making this deep run in the Masters, and actually collecting very good wins. And yeah, again, disappointed by Sakari, and also interesting to see this kind of more experienced and beloved players like Azarenka or Kerber as well. I mean, she fought hard with Swiatek, but mostly because of her experience before dropping down in a second set physically, and also Svitolina as well. So yeah, overall satisfied. And we're gonna talk about Collins again. I think at the end of the episode when we're gonna preview a bit of the Roland Garros because she's surprisingly in the mix. Let's say in the mix at the moment. She's been playing very good tennis this year.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what strikes me is her spirit. She wants to win. I can tell that she wants to win. Even in the semifinal against Sabalenka, which she ended up losing. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about Aryna Sabalenka for a second. She had a very difficult game in the round of 16 against Svitolina. Um, it was probably the most difficult game for Sabalenka in the whole tournament. I'm not exaggerating because it was very close until the end. I think it ended up in a tiebreak, and you could see that Aryna was not at her peak, it's not her best shape. But at the same time, I want to give some kudos to Svitolina because she also played the tennis of her life. And if she lost, it's just a matter of details. I don't know if you watched that, but that was one of the highlights of the tournament, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was a great entertaining match. Like I kind of thought after the second set, and Sabalenka was legitimately cruising after the second set. She was just like gonna win the third set 6-1 as well, and it looked like it was going that way until suddenly she seemed to had a back spasm or something in her back. Obviously, without speculating, was the broadcasters were saying, and you could see it because she started to really, really drop the speed of her serves, and that kind of gave a way back into the match to Svitolina. And actually, I believe that both had match points in one way or another. So it was a bit of a lucky escape. But from that point on, yeah, she kind of had to kind of win in spite of probably not being 100%.
Mhm.
But it wasn't the only match in which she lost.
And I was gonna say that's a constant in Sabalenka's tournament, and I agree with you, Stefano. Because if we look at the game in the quarterfinals against Ostapenko, it was supposed to be. Well, Ostapenko is number 10 WTA, so it was bound to be a close game. But when I started watching it, I was like, Sabalenka is getting destroyed by Ostapenko. Like she was passing her in every single fundamental. She was doing better in everything, Ostapenko. And then we see Sabalenka come back and win the first set and then won the second set. But again, the result here, the final score, is kind of, you know, it's kind of lying to the nature of the game, because it was very, very, very close, in my opinion. And there were moments, and more than just moments, where I thought that Ostapenko was going to beat Sabalenka. And to further your point, yes, I could also tell that Sabalenka was not at the best in the best shape, but also I remember saying that in the last episode about Madrid Open. Sometimes it seems to me like Sabalenka needs the push of a challenge, and I think that's what happened against Svitolina. That's what happened against Ostapenko. And despite how much I like Sabalenka, I think Ostapenko deserved to progress more in this tournament and make it at least to the semifinals, because she played really, really, really good tennis. And if she was paired with someone like Collins, I thought Ostapenko would have won. You could tell from her face that she was really upset to not have made it to the semifinals. I think she played her best tennis, and I always appreciate that when I see it.
Yeah, but that's the nature of the game. There are only 4 spots in the semifinals, so somebody will make it there and some others won't. And the draw also plays a big role. And in this case, it wasn't the best for her, but she might have better draws. And also to reiterate the point of time spent on court, the match against Svitolina also was very late night, so everything comes together and plays a role. And you could clearly see it in the final as well, where um, Sabalenka had an abysmal 50% point won on her serve, which is not good enough at any level. You would lose every single match you play like that. So made me also think that she would still not very comfortable serving, and might have affected the match against Świątek more, because if you're not 100%, she's just gonna pick on you, and that's actually what happened in the final as well.
Yeah, 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 I agree. Let's take one more moment to talk about Sabalenka's path to complete the discussion about that. I believe that paradoxically, the semifinal with Collins was one of the easier games compared to Ostapenko and compared to Svitolina. I believe that Collins' way of playing tennis is just not compatible with Sabalenka, and she suffers a lot from players like that. This is why I also said that Ostapenko would have had a chance against Collins, because Ostapenko is very similar to Sabalenka in the style that they play, in my opinion. And Collins was just playing the prey in this semifinal. It was just the cat with the mouse. And despite all her efforts, and we recognize them, she couldn't make it to the final. And I think Sabalenka rightfully went to the final with Świątek. And I think we're ready to talk about that. I was excited for this final. I was looking forward to it, but I was so disappointed, Stefano. I was so disappointed watching it because the final in Madrid set up such great expectations. And what we saw in Rome was just a one woman show by Iga Swiatek. Sabalenka was not there. You could tell again that something was wrong. You could tell that she was tired, probably from the previous games. I think it's fair to say that Swiatek had a fairly easier path, although she faced Gauff in the semifinals. But she was just fresher. And right now, I think she's in God mode. I think it would be difficult to beat her for pretty much anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the performance on Swiatek's side was just a normal performance from Swiatek, basically, which speaks high again of the level of tennis she's playing. It wasn't extremely exceptional on her serve, but the return game, it was just to another level. As I said earlier, you just don't see these type of numbers from a player like Sabalenka to win so little points on her serve in any condition. Like that's one of the few shots in which you have full control. And Sabalenka also quite powerful serve. It's a big part of her game, and just not being able to capitalize or play on it. But again, it's very very hard to go back beat on Swiatek. She played against her like right 2 weeks ago, and we also thought it could be like an even contested match like the final in Madrid, but it wasn't. But again, you try something different, at least because of the way and shape that Sabalenka made it there. But the same applied to Keys, which is what very funny. She lost the semifinal in Madrid against Świątek 6-1, 6-3, and you would expect a step forward meeting her again in Rome, like change something, do something tactically different, take a completely different approach, and she still lost exactly 6-1, 6-3. And
Mhm.
that's how good Swiatek has been
Yes.
in all aspects. That there's very little going wrong for her, and also as I said, preserving her body as well. It's very
Yes.
very important.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point. Stefano, you read my mind sometimes. I wanted to touch upon this before we move to ATP. I think that players like Sabalenka need to come to terms with the fact that they can't go all out constantly. There are moments in tennis, there are moments in tournaments, and as you said, you have to play around those moments. You can't keep pushing the whole time at your 100%. And that's what Sabalenka has been doing. And that's, I love it about her. I love it that she puts all of her passion, all of her heart in every game. But that's gonna retaliate back on you, and it's gonna take a toll on you. And we've seen how tired she got to this final. Too tired, too tired. And the other good point that you made is about changing things up. We just saw a more tired version of Sabalenka that was trying to do pretty much the same things against Świątek. Yes, throughout her path, from the round of 16 onwards, she has been using a little bit more drop shots. She has been a little bit more tactical, but that's nowhere close to enough. That's, I think that was dictated more by her physical problems rather than a choice, a deliberate choice. And that's exactly the problem. Swiatek is a more intelligent player than Sabalenka right now, and I hate to say that.
Yeah, I think basically you touched all the points I was making. Well, with the exception that yeah, maybe you do have to go 100% every single point uh, because it's your job, but sometimes you need to be kind of smarter. And it would be a great connection to the men's tournament because, um, as again, I like to stress this court time and Zverev basically went straight to the final, but I believe he actually lost the very first set of his tournament, and he lost it 6-1 in like 20 minutes, and that was it. Like, and then press the reset button. So it was not that expensive of like a physical toll losing that set. Compared to like having the long matches that other players have, and probably he did not push 100% in that particular set before starting to push. Of course, it's a dangerous choice, and you can only do it if you are very confident in your level, because then you end up in situations where you are forced to make a comeback, and sometimes it will not happen for you, as we saw in other very interesting matches on the men's side.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's talk about Zverev. Um, I agree with you. Yes, he was very conservative. Again, for example, in the quarterfinals against Fritz, we saw Fritz again being in good shape. He beat Dimitrov in the round of 16. And even though Dimitrov was fighting back, I saw some pretty good tennis by Fritz. But then in the quarterfinals against Zverev, he was just less of an intelligent player than Zverev. We can tell that Zverev has known this game for longer, that he knows the ins and outs of how a game goes, and he just had a stronger mental game than Fritz. And he preserved his energies for the semifinal against Tabilo, which he won 2-1, and in fact was a very very close game. So I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but then I would move on to Tabilo.
Yeah, apologies. The set that he lost, the 6-1, and it was the only set he lost in the whole tournament, Zverev, was the one against Tabilo in the semifinal. And yeah, it was 6-1. And I agree with what you said. Although the match between Fritz and Dimitrov was an absolute blast, especially the second set and the tiebreak of the second set was quite wild.
Beautiful,
Uh,
beautiful.
yeah, and with a bit of line controversies, cause Dimitrov thought he won the set very like on 7-5 or something on a very very close call that was actually out, and then it went on, and it was quite fun. But then you could see like he kind of gave it all in the tiebreak, and he could not keep up with Fritz, which became the first American to reach the quarterfinals in three different Masters on clay, which again speaks very highly of him. We touched upon it during the Madrid, seeing him doing very well on clay. So I was very pleased with his performance, but he was not asking the right questions to Zverev. Let's put it like that. It was kind of a dominant effort.
I like it. I like it very much. Yes, yes, absolutely. Actually, Dimitrov was one of my upsets for the ATP side. I expect a lot from him as the ATP number 10. And I think he does have more to give to tennis. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that. And we will touch upon it in the predictions for the French Open. But yeah, let's go back to Tabilo. He had a beautiful game. Oh, well, we said that he knocked out Djokovic in the round of 32. And some people, some commentators will argue that yeah, he was just lucky because of the water bottle injury that Djokovic suffered. Um, but then in the round of 16, he had a beautiful game against Chakhanov. Not an easy game, but Tabilo breezed through it, and I really loved his tennis there, just like he breezed through the quarterfinals against ATP number 42, Zhang from China. Nothing to say, nothing to say about that really. But I do want to comment on the semifinal, Tabilo versus Zverev. I think it was a very close one. I thought Tabilo was going to win. And you see there just Zverev's mental game. Because as you said, Stefano, he lost the first set 6-1, and then he had to come back. But I believe that as number four in the classify, you have to have that game. You have to have that mental strength to be able to come back in a situation like that. And he did. And so I'm sorry that Tabilo didn't make it to the final. It could have had a whole Chilean final, but it didn't happen, unfortunately. And yeah, I'm happy with that side of the table. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Otherwise, we can move on to Tsitsipas.
Yeah, maybe just touch on usually players that do these big upsets tend to kind of slow down and be kind of eliminated right away afterwards, which he did not do, which is a great sign for him. And obviously, being South American and with great awareness on clay, it helped him a lot. Very, very tough game, as you said, against Chakhanov. And some commentators were saying like, "Oh, Chakhanov is looking at this side of the table and be like, well, I can clearly see a path to the semifinal because, like, I mean, still should be favorite against Tabilo, but he had different ideas. So yeah, very very nice to see him go that deep and actually put Zverev to the test. He did not have the match point, but when he brought it into the tiebreak in the second set, he could have gone either way, you know, and it's always the case with tiebreaks. So yeah, kudos to Zverev as well. He did not had the mental fortitude sometimes in the past. And yeah, I think we can move on to the other side of the board, which was at least as interesting as this side.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I to add on top of that, um, I think this was Zverev's chance because Djokovic was out, Nadal was out, Alcaraz senior injured. So it's now or never, you know. And he took it. So yeah, nothing else to say about it. But yeah, let's talk about the other side of the tab. I want to touch upon Tsitsipas because I think he played very very well tennis in this tournament. He destroyed Deminor in the round of 16. Destroyed, guys. Go watch that game. And then, unfortunately, he um, lost the quarterfinals against Jarry or Harry. I don't know how he pronounces it since he's from Chile. But yeah, he Tsitsipas played very well. I'm surprised that he lost that quarterfinal. It was again another very close game. Tsitsipas won the first set, and then Jarry came back in the second set at a tiebreak. No, actually, not 7-5. Pardon me, and then he won the last one. I think Tsitsipas deserved more in this tournament and in general because he's coming back in very, very good shape. I don't know what you think about it, Stefano.
Yeah, he's been having a up and down season, part of a season on clay. We saw him win, expressing very good tennis, albeit slightly lucky in the final in Monte Carlo. and then get eliminated right away in the first round. So you really don't know what to expect from him. But we all know he's a solid player, especially on clay, and he's always going to be a contender in this type of tournament, especially with a lot of the big names out. But yeah, that match was as close as it gets. Just to give you some perspective, the total number of points won was 101 by Tsitsipas and 105 for Jarry. So it's 49-51. So uh, he cannot get closer than that. And although possibly he dropped a bit on his serving performance compared to what he did in the previous rounds, and he absolutely destroyed not only Deminor but also Cameron Norrie had no shot against him. Absolutely dominated that match as well. So yeah, a good run, but you kind of expect him to reach the quarterfinals each time in this type of tournaments. It's a matter if he can take the trophy home again and again, and it would have set up a very, very interesting semifinal against Tommy Paul, and
Yeah.
would have been like, yeah. But let's not discredit the Jarry's tournament because it was as impressive. And again, I'm gonna touch on time spent on court, and he spent a lot of time basically playing 3 sets uh, in every single round except for the match against
The run of 16.
yeah, against Arnaldi. So basically, from the round of 16 on, he actually had 3 sets against Napolitano, and he had Miller in the round of 16, only 2 sets. But then it was a very long match against Tsitsipas and against Tommy Paul as well. Was very intense match there as well. So yeah, impressive run by Jarry, which is a bit of a weird kind of South American clay player because being that tall and having that type of serve, he really put his chips, all of his chips, into the serve and volley and go into the net a lot. And he tried that as well against Zverev, and until it works fine. But once your opponent is able to like force you to stay back, that's where like you can start to see the cracks and the kind of not being a fully complete player, let's say, but more of a one trick pony. But sometimes you go on runs and they work, and that's actually what happened to him in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we expand on Jarry, I wanted to take a moment to talk about Tommy Paul because I really loved his path in this tournament. I loved how he danced around the court against Medvedev, which is something that I did not see coming. We know that Medvedev was still recovering, and we weren't even sure if he was going to participate to Rome. But I was really surprised to see that 6-1, 6-4, I believe it was in the end, by Tommy Paul. He played beautiful tennis. He's kind of a lightweight, so that's always surprising. And also again, Hurkacz, he played very well in the quarterfinals, and it was an interesting game in the semifinals against Jarry because I consider them as two kind of similar players. They're um, two lightweights in tennis. They are very agile. They don't hit as hard as other players, and so it was interesting to see them contend the semifinals. In the end, Jari made it to the final. I think he deserved it, even though it was a very close game, especially the second set. Um, I would like to see Tommy Paul, again in the final rounds of the next tournaments. So he's on definitely on my radar. But yeah, I guess it's the time to talk about the final, Stefano. I don't know if you got to watch it.
Yeah, I managed to watch it yesterday. Just one interesting fact about the Jarry Tommy Paul match. Uh, Actually, Jarry won 62% of his service points, which is slightly below average. And Tommy Paul won 66% of his service points. And usually, the one that wins in this stat is the better player on that day. So, again, it all comes down to those few little points. And the total points won was exactly 50-50 in this match. So, it could have gone really either way. And I really
Hmm.
enjoyed the run from Tommy Paul as well. But yeah, Jerry deserved it, and the final was a very very enjoyable match as well. But Zverev was legitimately unbeatable on this day. Consider that he did not concede any single break point, which already sets you up for winning. He won 95%, 20 out of 21 service points in the first set, with 90% of first serve in, which is just ridiculous. Like you can't, it's unplayable. As I said, like serve is the shot you have the most control, and if you control it that well and you are able to capitalize every time you're on serve, especially on first serve, there's no chance that the other guy will ever make it to 40-30. So yeah, in the Jari was not able to break the code as well in the second set. Obviously, the percentages dropped a bit toward the mean, but it was still extremely impressive. It was 86%, so 24 out of 28 points he won on serve. It's just unplayable when somebody is in that much of control, and he was very tactically aware of what Jerry was trying to do. I'm not the biggest expert of tactics. I know just the basics, but he was keeping him in the corner. He was forcing him to stay deep, whilst you could see Jerry was going to the net every single time, and he actually um, managed to go to the net 20 times only, because in previous matches he went more than 35 and or 40 times. So great game plan from Zverev, who actually managed to break him in the most pivotal points, because if he goes to tiebreak, which was the hope for Jarry both in the first set and in the second set, he might have had a better shot to at least uh, get away with one tiebreak, because that's the only game in which you don't need break points to win it. So I think Jari was hoping to get to at least a tiebreak, and when it mattered most, I think he had a double fault in one of the crucial games in the second set. Conceded 2 match points, managed to save them, but then there was there was no chance after that. So yeah, it was very, very impressive match by Zverev. I don't know if you had the kind of the same read.
Yeah, I agree that Zverev deserved to win. Just by looking at the game, just by watching it as a spectator, which is what I usually try to do, um, and then the analytical moment comes only later for me. I think that Jari played well too, especially in the second set. It was very close. He managed to go 5-5, and then Zverev, as you said, Stefano was just the better player, which is also what I expect from number four in the world. So there's not much more to add on top of that, rather than just saying that even though the biggest names were out of this tournament, it was still very enjoyable on the men's side. I Talking about the aesthetics, I really like the kits for Tsitsipas, the red one. I believe it had a lot of character. I also like the neon yellow one by Tommy Paul, and even Zverev's green/gray one was interesting. So Go check them out. I'm a big fan of apparel, as you know, Stefano. And on the women's side, I really liked Coco Gauff aesthetics. This tournament, I really love her racket. I think it's a head boom something. You will correct me if I'm wrong, but just a very beautiful kit, very beautiful racket. And I came back to talk about golf because one last note that I wanted to add on top of everything. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he told me, "Oh, did you watch the women's doubles final?" And I was just like, no, I forgot. I forgot. How could I? I forgot that Sara Errani and Jasmine Paolini were playing Coco Gauff and Erin Routliffe. And they won, actually. They played very, very well. So, I really enjoyed the game, even though I think doubles don't get as much exposure as they should. In fact, I did not hear about that until my dad asked me about it. I think Kerrani is a very seasoned player, and she has been very smart in this double. Paulini is younger. I like her spirit. She's very dynamic. Coco Gauff was just out of her elements. She looked like a fish out of her water. Not much to say about Erin Routliffe. She had some very good volleys, but in the end, the Italians had a stronger mental game, and they were able to win at the tiebreak at the end. Um, and I wanted to touch upon this with you, Stefano, because one of the biggest upsets in this tournament was also the Italians themselves, because we were in Rome and we were expecting to see more Italy in the final rounds, but unfortunately the doubles final was all we got.
Yeah, I think a bit more attention has been paid towards doubles this year, especially with the Olympics and some athletes that have the chance to fight for an Olympic medal that they otherwise can't. And I'm thinking players like Bolelli that cannot qualify as a singles player, but he has a chance in doubles, or Errani themselves. So very very fascinating run, or like pairs getting formed just to aim for the Olympics. So it's gonna mm, sh- share the light a bit more on the doubles, I think. Yeah, in terms of Italians, it was a bit disappointing on the men's side, but as I said last time, uh, got a bit unfortunate with the draw. Most of them drew each other. We have so many that we had to give all the wildcards to them, and they drew each other in the first rounds, and some of them lost quite early. Yeah, there weren't many, let's say, inspiring deep runs, and a bit disappointed at Sonego as well, losing right away in the first round. But that's the way the game goes. You can not always be on top, and you also saw Rublev getting out kind of by surprise after winning, and Tiafo also getting eliminated quite early. Um, so yeah, that's just the nature of the game, but they will come back stronger in the rest of the year.
Yeah, yeah. So we are approaching the conclusion for this episode, but Stefano, now it's your time to shine, because we are about to make the predictions for the next tournament, which is, as probably all of you know, the Roland Garros, the French Open. So I'm gonna start by saying that I expect, I hope, I want Nadal to do well in this tournament, because it is allegedly his last dance. So go ahead, Stefan.
Well, let's not put our hands too much in front of us, as there are tournaments before the Roland Garros this week, which are kind of these weird pre-Roland Garros tournaments. And actually, Djokovic and Ruud are playing in Geneva. and also Fritz is playing there. So in spite of being only a 250, that's gonna be interesting, and it's gonna give us some information about uh, the very last few days before the Roland Garros, and also in Lyon, which is less interesting as a draw, which has Hugo Humbert and Bublik. So some players decided to actually play this week. So yeah, and we can get a better view at the end of the week. And I would say it's too early to call. Maybe we can just share some of the kind of predictions like
I
on
would
on
like that.
Instagram. Like
I would.
so, we
I don't think our listeners care too much about Geneva, Stefano.
yeah, yeah. No, let's say we can do like a preview, but it's too early to call, I would say. So like I first need more information to make a prediction, but
Okay.
we can make a preview, and I am not sure it will look great for Nadal, although everybody would love to see him go deep, and he definitely can. But we saw him struggle physically against Hurkacz. But I mean, it's part of the aging process. And he said that if he was not confident with himself being competitive, he would not even go. And his standards of being competitive are extremely high. So if he's going, I assume that he will be good to go. But I'd say this is one of the most balanced Grand Slams tournaments we are getting into in a while for the men's side, as kind of have Alcaraz and Djokovic as front runners, but neither of them made it to the final in the Australian Open anyway. So that's interesting to start with. You get Sinner, who might come back from the injury, and you don't really know his shape. And then you have the ones that want to win a Grand Slam, but they're kind of struggling, which are Zverev and Tsitsipas, which I've been saying for years now that their window is about to close, their window of opportunities, because everybody expected them to be like the next the dominators of the game after Djokovic retires, but they're suddenly struggling to keep up the pace with the new generation that went one step ahead. I don't know what you think about it. And then obviously, Rude can always play a big role on clay.
Well, I believe it's going to depend very much on the draws. But yeah, I want to see Zverev now, how he's going to do in a more competitive tournament like Roland Garros. Um, I still see the big names getting to the semifinals and to the final. I believe there's going to be less surprises than what we had in Rome, especially on the men's side. But let's spend a few words also on the women's side. Um, right now, it's easy for me. I don't see any other potential contender to Swiatek's domination rather than Sabalenka, but she has to be in shape again in order to take it seriously. Otherwise, I still see another triumph from Iga Swiatek. Honestly,
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Consider that in the men's, I didn't even mention, Rune, Medvedev, and Rublev, which are big names, but they're probably less likely than the names I mentioned earlier. Whilst in the women, yeah, basically everybody agrees with you on Iga being a big favorite to take it home, and I also agree with that. And but there are few names which are mainly the top four players, which are Sabalenka, Coco, and Rybakina. And Rybakina, especially taking a rest after Rome, might be a contender that maybe some people are overlooking a bit. But yeah, the fifth name I would give, and as anticipated earlier, is actually Collins. That can be a long shot to win it anyway. But if you want to pick a player outside of those top four, my opinion could be Collins.
yeah, I hope that Collins gets as far as possible. I believe she deserves it, but we will see. We will see what happens. Um, So we are at the conclusion of this episode. We made our predictions, and there's nothing else for me to do than thank my guest for today, Stefano Tognazzi.
Thank you again, Michele. And as always, it is always a pleasure to be here to talk about tennis.
Absolutely, and it's a pleasure to have you with us, Stefano. And thank you also to our listeners that have been supporting us. And I wanted to remind you that if you want to go the extra mile, you have the chance to do it. You have the chance to support us um, free of charge by spending 30 seconds to go on Spotify, go on Apple Podcasts and write a review and leave us the 5 stars because it helps us immensely. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but yes, that is it for now. We are thinking of setting up social media for the Drop Shot podcast. We are thinking of partnerships, but that is all gonna depend on you, listeners, and on the love that you give us. So thank you, and we will see you very soon in a new episode of Drop Shot.